G'day everyone, I'm Ash. Today we'll be taking a look at my favourite aircraft of all time, the CAC Boomerang. It's my favourite aircraft for several reasons which we'll get into a little bit later, but as the title suggests, it's always coming back, and that's great. But let's take a look at some of its humble beginnings. As Japan entered the war, launching a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, things are looking down. With most of Europe under the control of the Nazis, Japan began to extend its military might south. As a result, Australia was in full swing. The top brass wanted aircraft and fast. So on the 22nd of February 1942, a week before the fall of Singapore, a decision was hurriedly made to produce a local fighter as a stopgap measure. Thankfully, the Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation had already had plans for an interceptor aircraft. The design was ordered into production immediately. The new fighter was designed as an interceptor, with a high rate of climb and good manoeuvrability. To obtain the best performance, the aircraft was fitted with the most powerful engine in Australia, the 1200 horsepower Pratt & Whitney Twin Wasp R1830, which was in production for the Bristol Beaufort. The airframe construction was accelerated by incorporating many Wirraway components, and production proceeded so well that the first aircraft progressed from a drawing board to test flight in less than 4 months, 16 weeks. And thus the Boomerang was born. Often referred to as Australia's panic fighter, the Boomerang was a robust aircraft. The first flight flew on the 29th of May 1942, with the flight tests revealed that the Boomerang had excellent performance, good handling qualities, and was an effective gun platform with its 2 cannons and 4 machine guns. As production progressed, many improvements and modifications were incorporated, and the various standard versions were grouped under 3 CAC designations: CA-12, CA-13, and CA-19. In addition, a high-performance prototype, the CA-14, was built, with a turbo supercharger. This same aircraft was later streamlined and fitted with a square-cut tail assembly and became the CA-14A. Altogether, 250 Boomerangs were built, and various versions included 105 CA-12s, 95 CA-13s, and 49 CA-19s, whilst the sole CA-14 remained a prototype. Some versions I mentioned above either held a pylon for a single 500 kg bomb or a long-range drop tank. But anyway, the Royal Australian Air Force accepted the first Boomerang on July 15th, 1942, and the last aircraft was delivered on February 1st, 1945. Initial pilot conversion was carried out with No. 2 Operational Training Unit at Mildura in the southeastern state of Victoria. These pilots formed the first operational units, numbers 83, 84 and 85 squadrons. The first enemy contact was made on May 16th, 1943. When the Boomerangs from No. 84 Squadron intercepted and drove off 3 G4M1s, also known as the infamous Betty bombers. For many months, the Boomerangs successfully carried out many similar sorties, until eventually they were replaced by P-40 Kitty Hawks and Spitfires. Once the new aircraft arrived, the Boomerang was transferred to the Army Cooperation role, with numbers 4 and 5 squadrons. The Boomerang soon established a high reputation for effective strikes throughout New Guinea, at the Solomon Islands and Borneo, particularly so in coordinated operations with the Royal New Zealand Air Force Corsairs. But as quickly as the Boomerang arrived into frontline service, it just as quickly gave way to more capable designs coming off the American assembly lines. Once surplus resources had been built up in the United States in late 1942, Canada, Australia and the UK were now using American aircraft en masse. Even though the Boomerang was not the best fighter, it played an absolutely crucial role in defending Australia and became an important part of the Australian aviation history at one of the most vulnerable times when Australia was facing an invasion and isolation. Nevertheless, the symbol that was the Boomerang would long remain the symbol of a nation that put forth and strived to design and produce a wartime fighter when it was needed. Back in War Thunder, things are a little different. In War Thunder we have 2 variants of the Boomerang, the Mark 1s, also known as CA-12s, and the Mark 2s, known as CA-13s. In War Thunder, the Mark II should have a slightly better flight performance, however that's just not the case, so for the purpose of this video, we're going to be focusing on the Mark II, considering the fact that both aircraft are nearly identical anyway. So, where do we start? Well, the Boomerang is a Rank 2 British fighter at a battle rating of 3.3, this goes for both Boomerangs. And while they appear cute, the armament of the aircraft consists of two 20mm Hispano cannons and four 7.7mm machine guns, with 120 cannon rounds and 4,000 machine gun. As for armour, it's nothing special, with a single panel of a 38 bulletproof glass in front of the pilot, and a 12.7 steel plate with 3mm steel plate flaps around it. Now let's take a look at the internals. Now the internals don't show anything too particular interesting, apart from the fact that it does not have a lot of fuel. It's got 3 fuel tanks, 2 oil cooling systems, one air cooled and one water cooled, and it also has a radial engine that is turbocharged. As for the engine that they've got listed here, I don't know that it is the correct engine. The engine they've got listed is the Pratt & Whitney S3C4G18, a cylinder radial. I'm sure there's a reasoning for putting a different engine to what is listed on every other website and or person I've talked to, but you know, it could be a replica engine that they've shoved in one of the restored Boomerangs. But anyway, let's move on to some gameplay. Today we're playing on Alternate History Berlin. It's evening and the weather is listed as thin clouds. I'm joined by our fellow squad mate, Clive the Kiwi, and we're just flying around in our Boomerangs. So we've taken off, we've gained some altitude, we're currently at 3,200 meters and climbing steadily, and all the Russian Air Force is to our left and mainly to our right there. Wow, so many of them. So at the moment I'm trying to decide whether I want to head in towards the loner aircraft or head towards the massive swarm of Russian aircraft. At this point I'm trying to figure out what I want to do, and you need to make snappy decisions in the Boomerang because it's not the fastest aircraft in the world. Try and let your enemies come towards you. So, we're going to target this Yak 1 because, well, it's currently the closest, even though the I-16 was 3 kilometers away that we're looking at just before. So he's already engaged, the Corsair's gone vertical. Yak 1's trying to do some fancy manoeuvring and goes straight into the dive. We're just going to engage this Yak 1 and see if we can nail him on this first pass. And he goes under, so we roll the aircraft over, fire a couple of test shots into him, again missing. As everybody shoots him, he goes into the vertical, thinking he can escape, and well, that's a bad mistake behind a Boomerang. Put a few rounds of cannon into him, resort to my machine guns, because the cannons in this thing is very valuable. Flip the aircraft over, as he does. He is smoking heavily. We're twisting and turning. I'm putting a few test shots, fire a couple of cannons into him again. And, well, roll off and re-engage. Rolling it over, still pursuing on this Yak 1-6, we're just going to come in and slot in as he pulls it vertical. Oh no, that is a very big mistake. I'll line the guns up, pre-fire, and boom, that's the first kill of the match. Now that I've killed something, I'm just going to look around and, oh crap, there's a Yak 1 on my 6. Pull, 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 pull up and dive under his shots. I get hit a little bit in the fuel tank and my oil is damaged. However, he goes into the vertical and I try and chase him, but with low energy and not enough speed, the best thing I can do is try and spray him and hit him with some of the machine guns. But no trouble, my squad mate is here to clean up and finish the Yak 1 off. Good job, Clive. So teamwork times 1. Now we're going to dive down into that red blob, starting with the aircraft that are highest in altitude. We're going to try and go after that I-16. And again, just keeping tabs on my surrounding area. Just going to try and slot in on this I-16 when he's preoccupied with the Spitfire. Okay, pull up and over and then onto the 6 of the I-16. Unfortunately, the I-16 realises that he's being engaged, pulls it, flips it over and goes down vertically. So, realising that I've now got to disengage and re-engage, flip it up in the vertical, loop it, and watch my squad mate miss on a perfect opportunity to kill that I-16. Slot in on his 6, fire a couple of cannon, and boom, goodbye I-16. Right, next target. The Yak-1 clearly didn't see me coming in to try and shoot him. I put a few hits onto his engine and fall in and slot on his 6. He was probably targeting that Spitfire. He does a few combat emergency rolls, and I just calmly, selectively come onto his 6, putting a few shots into his wing as he comes round, and that's my 3rd kill for the match. Swinging it round, I'm looking for any remaining aircraft that are at this particular altitude, and it appears that every other aircraft is up high. Let's talk about how you're supposed to use the Boomerang and the pros and cons of it. It's got an absolutely stellar turning speed. It is a wonderful aircraft when it comes to turning. It's like they've merged Spitfire with a Hurricane, and it just feels so powerful, especially when you're turning and dogfighting with aircraft that necessarily don't know what to do when they engage a Boomerang. It's a premium aircraft, so it gives a boost in Silver Lines and RP. It has decent secondary guns and can catch enemies on fire easily with the tracer bullets, which is the bullets that I'm using now. It's got a slightly increased rate of climb compared to the Boomerang Mark 1, but it's debated whether that is actually an improvement because there's no real noticeable difference between the two. The cannons have a wide variety of ammo options, and well, the cons are a low ammo count for the 20mm cannons, a decreased silver line boost compared to the Mark 1, a rather slow compared to others in terms of engine performance and general flight performance, and, well, Japanese planes can outturn you. The engine catches fire easily, and it has relatively thin armour. And when I mean this aircraft catches fire, because the fuel tanks are sitting behind the pilot, you'll find that any shots that come in from directly behind you usually end up in, well, death. If you're engaged with American planes, and if they turn fight you, you can rip them to shreds, but if they're trying to use their boom and zoom, then try to lure them to the Allied planes. As for German aircraft, don't head on German aircraft. The Boomerang's engine will catch fire and just explode wonderfully, and it also lacks the armament to decisively damage them. Instead, try turn fighting them, and lure them into Allied planes. Russian planes, similar to the situation with the Germans, but the Yak-3s you face can be a bit tougher due to their turning speed, and it's roughly similar. As for versing British planes, well, that's pretty much a rarity unless you get a mixed match, so we won't worry about that. Getting back to the action here, PE-3 has dived down from space and decided to engage us mere mortals. I'm going to try and put a few shots onto him because it looks like he was going to come head on with me, pick it up and get a few damages to his engine. Unfortunately, Kiwi takes it straight into the rear and, well, his engine is now on fire. Good job, Kiwi. So it looks like Kiwi's going back to base, and myself and this Spitfire are going to resume the hunting for a PE-3. Thankfully, the Australian bush firefighters managed to put out that aircraft fire, and, well, he can return back to base. In the meantime, myself and the Spitfire are playing mine, trying to catch the PE-3. Now notice how far the PE-3 is trying to extend. He's trying to get us into the range of his gunners, but this thing is not particularly quick at interception, which is why later war variants of the Boomerang, well, basically the Boomerang was retired completely to close air support with coordination with the Royal New Zealand Air Force Corsairs. And on several operations while covering for American GIs, the Americans called it smoky due to the fact that you'd see a bunch of smoke arrive and then all of a sudden a Boomerang would be there trying to shred up Japanese positions. So the Americans called this thing smoky, or at least from what I have been told from one of the guys who works at Tamora Aviation Museum on Suzy Q, which is the Boomerang you would have seen pictures of earlier this video. Drunk Donkey here, what a name, has now engaged emergency dive mode, so we're going to engage after him and try and slot in on his 6. Now my gun targeting distance is set at 400 meters, which is not particularly great when trying to engage targets from longer distances above 800 meters. But you can certainly use this to your advantage, because the closer you get, the more likely you are to actually shredding the enemy aircraft to pieces. But you're competing with other aircraft. So as you can see, my shells drop off too much. I get a couple of hits into him. It looks like he's going for the treetop method here. As you see, he's now 700 meters away. And, well, I'm actually closing on him now. I think he's lost all his speed. But I'm putting in slight hits. So the advantage of this thing is you can spray and pray all you like, because you have 4,000 rounds of machine guns. Whereas the cannons are a little more precious and more in dire straits. Oh, careful not to shoot the teammate P40. He realises that I'm shooting over him and, well, moves out the way. I get a lucky hit on his engine and critical him. And I get the kill assist. Not to worry, there is a CAC 2 in front of me. A relatively new Russian aircraft I've never really engaged before, so this should be particularly interesting. I know it's a heavy fighter and I know it's got decent armament. I wasn't planning on doing a video on them, but I may end up by doing so. It looks like he's going to go engage the P40C just below me, and he does just that. Realising that I'm also here, I put a couple of hits into him. I roll it around, nearly hitting the ground there. And we're now on his 6. He doesn't know what to do, so he pulls into the vertical. This is where the firepower of the Boomerang is lackluster, so I could have killed him there. Nevertheless, the P40C sets him on fire. We nearly collide there. And we're going to come in and, well, apparently I got the kill for that. So, that is my 4th kill. It's been a few minutes and I've just engaged a blind hunt. I'm sitting just on the riverbank here and waiting for a bunch of other friendlies to engage this last Russian aircraft that is on his airfield. The major problem with War Thunder here is the fact that the AA is just so overpowered, and you get people that just sort of hide at their airfield and then wait for you all to die and then they claim that they've won. It's kind of a pain. Anyway, we're going to hit the treetop level here because I'm going to see this P40 get shredded by AAA. I'm expecting him to be shredded by AAA at least. I don't know about you, but I've had many situations where I've been probably 6-7 kilometers away from an airfield at a height of 3,000 to 4,000 meters, and I've got sniped by the base AAA. I think it's ludicrous in War Thunder that the base AAA can snipe you, but at the distances that we are, it's expected that the base AAA can take you out. I take a couple of hits here, the P40C goes down, and I'm just unloading into the front of this bomber here, trying to hope for it to get the kill. Unfortunately, I get pilot sniped by AAA, but I get the kill. Anyway, on to results, and that was an impressive match indeed. And certainly one of the funnest matches I've had since, well, overlooking the Boomerang just a little bit in the last 6 months. So, 9,000 modifications research and 13,000 vehicle research, and a whole host of different other medals. And to top off that, I've nearly unlocked the Whirlwind Mark I, which is the last British aircraft that I need in order to, well, complete the British dream. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this very strange video indeed. Boomerang is definitely still sits in a warm place in my heart. I don't know and I can't really explain why, but it is just an absolutely fantastic airplane indeed. Ironically, after the last video, this is the second match I've played of War Thunder in a week, so, I don't know. I've still got it, but it was all the Boomerang, because the Boomerang is absolutely fantastic. I hope you enjoyed the video. Special thanks goes to all of my patrons who support this channel, considering that my channel has been 90% demonetized. Without your support, I think I wouldn't be doing YouTube anymore. Anyway guys, let me know what you thought of the video. My name's Ash, and I'll catch you in the next one.